Congressman Seth Magaziner, thanks you for joining us from Washington today to talk about the inauguration. Just first of all, tell us what it was like to be there as Donald Trump is inaugurated for a second time.
Well, it's always inspiring to witness the peaceful transfer of power, which has been the foundation of our country for almost 250 years. I can't say that I agreed with everything that President Trump said or even much of what he said. But it really is inspiring to witness this tradition that now this is the 60th inauguration we've had, and it's important to our country.
You touched on it. I mean, among other things, he said that the golden age of America starts now, the end of a decline and betrayal, and that it's Liberation Day. As a Democrat and a Trump opponent, what do you make of those remarks as he takes the oath of office?
Well, it's typical Trump. He's focused mostly on himself and not on what is best for the American people. But we've gotten used to that over the last several years. You know, what I'd say about the speech as a whole is when he spoke broadly, there were many things that I agree with. I liked when he spoke about the greatness of America. I think he had a line about how impossible things are what we do best in our history, and that's certainly true, and I thought was very poignant. But when he got to specifics about what his plans actually were, that's when it became disturbing. I didn't hear very much about how he planned to bring down the cost of living or strengthen the economy or improve health care, the things that voters care about, that Americans care about. Instead, I heard him focusing a lot on divisive social issues, the kinds of nasty partisan fights that, frankly, the American people are tired of.
And again, what you mentioned there, right? He is basically rolling back DEI initiatives, and also said in that speech that the federal government will only recognize two genders. Is that what you're talking about? And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, among other things. I mean, listen, when I talk to Rhode Islanders, they care about the economy. They care about the cost of living. They don't want to see a government that is exclusionary to people. The reality is that you do have people in our country who are LGBTQ+, who are transgender, who don't appreciate hearing the leader of their country exclude them in an inauguration speech. But that being said, I think we know what to expect from Trump when it comes to wanting to focus on divisive social issues. The other thing that I would say is it was startling being there and seeing a row of billionaires sitting right behind the president, in front of his cabinet, in front of members of Congress. I believe that the governors from around the country who came to the inauguration to represent their states had to watch the inauguration in the basement of the Capitol on TV. But these billionaires who Trump is friendly with got prime seating. That's very unusual. That's not normal. And I fear that that's a sign that, again, his agenda is going to be focused more on what's best for the billionaires than the working people who elected all of us. I hope that won't be the case, but I did not think the optics of that were very good.
Representative Omar, a fellow Democrat, I think was critical on social media of people who had criticized Donald Trump as a threat to democracy, then going to the inauguration and, potentially applauding. And you said there were some inspiring parts. But what do you think of that criticism, right? Obviously, there's the January 6th, 2021, that's all part of the past and in play here. What do you think of that juxtaposition as now you sit in the Capitol and then sit there, as you said, for the peaceful transfer of power, but knowing what happened 4 years ago?
Yeah, it's sobering remembering what happened 4 years ago. But I think the fact that Donald Trump 4 years ago did not recognize the peaceful transfer of power makes it all the more important that those of us who do believe in the peaceful transfer of power and do believe in following the will of the voters be there today. That was our way of showing the way that leaders are supposed to act in our country, which is to respect the will of the people, to respect democracy, and respect the truth. So that's why I felt it was important to go today. I understand that others had different opinions about it, but I do believe that it's my job to show up and to witness the presidential inauguration, as has been done by my predecessors for almost 250 years.
And what do you think the tone is now going to be like here on day one and moving forward, being in Congress, and then, Republicans controlling both chambers? And what do you anticipate happening in terms of a response to the Trump agenda?
Well, my approach has always been that I will work with Republicans. I will work with the Trump administration when it's good for Rhode Island and it's good for our country. But I will also not hesitate to stand up to extremism when necessary and when they overreach and they go too far. So on the one hand, if we can find bipartisan agreement on things that, is good for Rhode Islanders, I'm all for it. And I will work with people from the other party as I have in my entire time in Congress. But I'm not going to accept attacks on our democracy, attacks on people's civil rights, and policies that I think are misguided.
To President Biden, what did you think of him on his way out of office issuing these preemptive pardons to Dr. Fauci and his family members?
I understand why he did it, because Donald Trump and his followers have been openly threatening to prosecute people because of their political leanings. And so I understand why President Biden did it. I personally don't agree with it. I think that issuing pardons may mislead people into believing that there is an admission of guilt when no such guilt is admitted or exists. And so I don't believe, for example, that members of the January 6th committee did anything wrong. They did their job in investigating the causes and the events of that assault on our Capitol 4 years ago. So I don't believe that they needed pardons because they were just doing their job and did it well, as far as I can tell.
Do you also think it might set a precedent for President Trump?
I'm concerned it sets a precedent, and I'm concerned that it implies guilt where there is none. And so I disagree with those pardons, but it's the president's decision to make, and so we move forward.
And just finally, what'd you think of being inside as opposed to outside?
I would have preferred it to be outside, not so much for me, but because I know there were many thousands of people, including many Rhode Islanders, who were excited to come in and be a part of the inauguration and see it. Our office helped hundreds of people from Rhode Island get tickets to stand on the South Lawn and go witness the inauguration. I feel bad for them because many of them had booked flights and hotel rooms, and President Trump's decision to move the inauguration inside literally left a lot of people out in the cold. I also remember back to my first inauguration when I was first elected to state treasurer in 2014, and I believe the temperature outside at the State House that day was 18 degrees, so it was even colder then than it is today here in Washington. So, in Rhode Island, maybe we're a little tougher and a little hardier than people from some other parts of the country. We know how to dress warm and suck it up. But in all seriousness, I do wish that President Trump had decided to keep the event outside, not so much for me, but for all of the people and, frankly, a lot of his supporters who wanted to come and witness it.
All right. Congressman Magaziner, thank you for joining us from Washington today on Inauguration Day.
Thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.